It's our hurricane hunt season in review. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. He is meteorologist Sean Sublette. And Sean, hopefully, this is the last hurricane hunt video we are doing this year.
But this is the season finale, as they say. We'll be back next year, barring any kind of freak December or January system. But we should pretty much close the book on the hurricane season for 2023.
Yeah, the official end of hurricane season was on November the 30th.
Mhm.
It was another more active than usual season, fourth most storms since records started with this. However, there wasn't too many of those storms that made landfall. There was one landfalling hurricane in the United States. That was Idalia, which made landfall in the Big Bend of Florida. We had two landfalling tropical storms as well. And in the United States, according to the reinsurer Aon, 2.5 billion in US damages. We have seen many years with more than that, but still there was some devastation. But we have seen years, especially years when we've seen this many storms with more of them making landfall. Now we had an El Nino here, especially in the second half of the hurricane season. Sean, take us through it.
Yeah. So, what does the El Nino mean anyway? So, let's step back a little bit and talk about what the atmosphere is like when there's not an El Nino. Typically, we have the trade winds blowing across the subtropics down near the equator, and they go from east to west. And effectively, they push very warm water out toward the western part of the Pacific Ocean. In an El Nino, those trade winds back off a fair bit. Sometimes they even reverse direction, so that very warm ocean water sloshes back to the east toward the coast of South America. The impact, though, on the tropics in terms of tropical systems isn't so much the warm water in the ocean. It's more in line with what the winds are doing aloft. They have the tendency in an El Nino year to shear apart or tear apart the circulations that form hurricanes. Not all of them, but there is that tendency. So, as we looked at what the hurricane season outlooks were back at the beginning of the season, most places were close to normal in terms of an outlook, but a few places were beginning to hedge warmer than normal, unusual because the ocean water is so warm. Now, the people who have been doing this the longest are the folks at Colorado State University, and their June 1st forecast called for 15 named storms, 7 of which becoming hurricanes and 3 becoming major hurricanes. We ended up with 20 named storms, but the hurricanes and major hurricanes came out to about the same. Now, to their credit, in their early season outlooks, they saw how warm the water was and they upped these numbers to about 18 or so. But when you still compare it to normal, it was a slightly above normal season. So, Joe, I think when we look back at everything as a whole, it wasn't just Colorado State, but NOAA, several places that do this kind of work, this seasonal forecasting. We're on this idea of normal to a little bit above. We wouldn't call it a hyperactive season, but clearly it was above normal in the Atlantic Basin this year. But it's a little bit deceiving because there weren't that many, right, in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. Take us through the spaghetti here, man.
Yeah. We call it spaghetti plot because it's just a bunch of lines squiggling around everywhere.
Mhm.
It, in this case, different colors. I don't think you'd want to eat rainbow colored pasta. At least I wouldn't. Tricolor pasta, different
Not purple
story.
ones, man. Not purple pasta.
Yeah, purple pasta. You never know. But we take a look at all the storms here in the Atlantic. Don't have to look at each line, but just notice only a few really got to the United States here. Like we said, one landfalling hurricane, that was Idalia. And then we had two tropical storms that made landfall. So, really, a lot of these storms even avoided parts of the Caribbean, staying mainly in the open Atlantic basin. Now, we do want to focus on two storms. We'll start with Idalia. Here's the path of it. It got up to a category 4, ended up being a category 3 storm at landfall near Perry, Florida. That's in the Big Bend of Florida. It was the strongest hurricane in 125 years to hit the Big Bend of Florida here. We had 8 feet of surge in Cedar Key, Florida. You might remember that from Ophelia. In Clearwater, which is near Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, away from the Big Bend, actually saw their record highest tide since they've been keeping records there. And it was a rapidly intensifying storm that continues to be something we've seen more of in recent years, where you see at least a 35-mile-an-hour increase in the wind speed of the storm within 24 hours. In this case, it strengthened 55 miles an hour within 24 hours. Then we talk about Ophelia, not because it was so strong, but from where it actually brought impacts in the heavily populated I-95 corridor. And as an I-95 corridor resident, Sean Sublette, he's going to talk to us about it.
Yeah, I think this is the one that a lot of us think about in terms of bigger impacts in the middle Atlantic. Not to take anything away from Idalia, because it certainly was a huge impact on the Big Bend, but frankly, it's not as populated as a lot of these other areas. Now, Ophelia brought tidal flooding to coastal North Carolina, a general 3 to 5 inches of rain for eastern North Carolina and into eastern Virginia, and 40 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts along the Outer Banks. And some of these areas down toward Hatteras Island, they did some 65 to 68 mile an hour gusts. So remember, it's got to be 75 to become a legit hurricane, but there was certainly a lot of tidal flooding across the North Carolina coastline. I don't want to say we got off this season lucky, because anytime you have damage, it's bad. But I'll be honest, I thought we would be a little bit worse this season, Joe. I think we are fortunate that we did not have as many systems take hold in the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean Sea, for that matter.
Yeah, definitely. When you are talking about 20 named storms, three made
Yeah.
landfall in the United States, and really it was the one Idalia that brought
Mhm.
significant impacts here. Definitely could have been worse, right? I mean, definitely could have been worse. We always like to say it only takes one storm for it to be active near you. If there was only one hurricane all season long and it made landfall at your house, you would remember that season forever. So we do understand that a lot of this is relative here.
Absolutely.
Um, like we said, in terms of damages, 2.5 billion. That's the estimate for this season here. But we're gonna wrap it up with this episode of Hurricane Hunt. On that note, as we take a look at our 2023 season and review, this is also a good time to say that Sean and I aren't going away. We have Snow Search every Wednesday. You can check it
Yes.
out. We're talking
Flip the
about
dial from hurricane season to winter storm season,
that's
because
it.
that's what we're looking at next.
That's it. That's what we're looking at. Snow and cold. So if you live anywhere from North Carolina to New York, this series is for you. It's every Wednesday. We're looking at snow and cold threats for the following week, 5 to 10 days out here. And you can find that until we think it's going to stop snowing in those
Until at
areas.
least
Probably sometime in
March.
March. Sometime in
Yes.
March for sure. So, Sean, any last words here before we wrap it on up?
No, everybody, be safe. Have a good holiday season. So we're all done with hurricanes, we suspect. But as you said, follow us every Wednesday for a new episode of Snow Search. We already think there's going to be some snow in upstate New York and New England next week.
Yeah, we shall
Off we
say.
go.
Good tease, Sean. Good tease.
Off we go, man.
We'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks again for following us on Hurricane Hunt all year long. And again, we'll see you on Snow Search.